From the Lever's reader-supported newsroom, this is Lever Time. I'm David Sirota. President Donald Trump has signed more than 200 executive orders in the first 9 months of his second term. That's more executive orders than President Joe Biden's entire 4 years in office. Trump has ordered the end of birthright citizenship. He's ordered the National Guard to invade Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Memphis. He's expanded immigration detention centers, cut funding for critical social programs and education. With each executive order, Donald Trump is stress testing the limits of the rule of law in the United States. So who exactly is fighting back? Today on Lever Time, I talked to one of the most fearless legal warriors in the country, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, who's using lawsuits to try to challenge Trump and protect his constituents. But can the rule of law overcome the Trump administration's authoritarian power grabs? That's all coming up on today's show.
After the biggest manhunt in Minnesota history, authorities have detained a 57-year-old man accused of assassinating former Minnesota Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband.
This past June, Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated in their own home. While searching the murder suspect's car, law enforcement found a hit list targeting nearly 70 other Minnesota officials. Last week, I asked one of those people about how it felt to be a potential target.
I don't have any fear of these people, man. They don't keep me up at night, and they can go to hell.
That's Minnesota's Democratic Attorney General, Keith Ellison. Keith and I go way back. I've known him since he was in Congress in the mid-2000s. How old are you now?
Yeah, I'm 62.
62.
I
feel
am.
like I met you when you were younger.
42.
A lot younger.
That was when I started in Congress.
Yeah, that's right. Before becoming the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison was a lawyer specializing in civil rights and defense law. He then represented Minnesota's 5th Congressional District for 12 years, serving on the House Financial Services Committee, helping to bolster antitrust enforcement and the Progressive Caucus in Congress. He also ran a pretty close race for DNC chairman. In 2018, Keith Ellison was elected Attorney General of Minnesota. For years, he's been challenging big tech's grip on the market.
TikTok is profiting, making big money, and our kids are paying a heavy price.
That's Ellison last month, talking about a recent lawsuit that he filed against TikTok. But since Trump's re-election in 2024, Ellison's attention has shifted to the executive branch. Along with independent law firms and civil rights groups, state attorneys general have been on the front lines battling some of the Trump administration's most bold and dangerous executive orders. They've filed dozens of lawsuits at a breakneck speed.
California and many other states are challenging the president's executive order that seeks to end birthright citizenship.
They've tried to stop the National Guard storming Washington, D.C.
The president and the Attorney General of the United States have attempted an illegal, hostile takeover of our local police force, the Metropolitan Police Department.
They've tried to stop demands for food stamp recipients' personal information.
Colorado joined another lawsuit against the Trump administration over a demand for SNAP participant data they believe will be used to further mass deportation efforts.
And more. The efforts from attorneys general are a continuation of their legal strategy from Trump's first term, when they sued the Trump administration roughly twice as much as they sued the administrations of George W. Bush and Barack Obama. In Minnesota, some of Keith Ellison's legal challenges have been successful. For example, Ellison's joint lawsuit with 23 other states prevented public schools nationwide from losing federal funding. But Trump 2.0 seems far less willing to accept the rule of law. Earlier this month, Ellison filed an amicus brief in court supporting the Washington, D.C. Attorney General's lawsuit against that city's National Guard takeover. But on the very same day, Trump signed an executive order sending National Guard troops to Memphis. So the question is, are all these lawsuits actually discouraging the Trump administration's abuse of power? Can state attorneys general fight these legal battles with the White House while addressing all of the usual issues in their own home states? And as our country's legal institutions are compromised by organized money, should we even be looking to the courts to save American democracy? I wanted to hear Keith Ellison's perspective, so I met up with him in a busy hotel lobby during a conference last week. We began our conversation talking about violence. How can the law protect Americans from assassins and mass shooters? Is the problem bigger than gun control?
And these shooters, these threateners, these bullies, I'm not scared of them at all. But I do think that people should take security seriously, and I do encourage it. And I do my best to listen to my staff and everybody. But at the same time, my biggest impulse is to try to deal with the gun lobby, who actually benefits from shootings. So when there's a mass shooting, enough people think, oh my God, maybe I need a gun, that go out there and buy a bunch of guns. So they literally profit off of death. That's not a metaphor, that is a fact. And it's documented and it's statistically provable. So how do I feel about it? I think we need to sue them. We need to stop them. We need to make them change the way they do business. We need to pass red flag laws. We need to get rid of assault rifles. Yep, we don't need them. Did fine without them from 94 to 2004. Didn't miss them at all. The only people missed them is the people who make them and make a lot of money for them. We need trigger locks on all the guns. If you do own a gun, lock it up, put it in a locker. Don't let your 11-year-old trying to impress his friend have a tragic accident which you will never recover from. We need to act responsible in America, and you can do it without harming the Second Amendment at all. But we don't do it. And so what we have is 8-year-old Harper and 10-year-old Fletcher shot and killed at Annunciation Church and school when they're trying to pray. Honestly, I'm mad as hell about it.
What else do you think's going on when it comes to mass shooters beyond just we're all immersed in guns all the time? I mean, what else?
My analysis is we live in a country where anything one sells, somebody else buys, and there's a profit motive. And so I think what's really going on, it's not about the right to bear arms, it's the right to sell arms. I mean, look, there was a company that was marketing guns by calling it not an AR-15, but a JR-15, like Junior. So they're literally marketing guns to children.
Unbelievable.
There was another one that said, when Antifa shows up, you better be ready to protect your family. So they're marketing fear. And then there's another one that says, you get your man card back, as if you're not a real man unless you're packing heat. So let me tell you, if you need a gun to make you feel like a man, you ain't one, and no gun can make you one. So what I'm saying is people in the gun industry manipulating male insecurity, fear, and a bunch of other stuff to sell guns, and they don't give a damn what level of suffering their product causes. Put them in the same box as the cigarette manufacturers. Remember, at one time we said 4 to 5 doctors smoke pell-mell, and at one time we had lead in the paint, and they lied about that. And the opioid people said, oh, this is not going to addict you. So it's this urge to maximize profit at the expense of human life. And that's what I really think is going on. But I think there's some other things, too. I also think you have some people who want to make the case that they need guns to protect real Americans from not real Americans. There's some people who believe that guns are somehow a tool of the dominance of people of European descent. Now, I know that most people know that's garbage and a lie, but I also think there's some people who do believe that. You never see a poorly armed Klan member, right, or neo-Nazi. They all are gun fetishists, right? So they're pushing that. But then, look, I'm a gun owner, okay? I mean, I own a hunting rifle and a shotgun, and that's what I use them for. They're tools to me. But for some people, they're not just tools. They fetishize these things. And no other country does this. I think we've had about 209 mass shootings in the calendar year and only about 250 days in the calendar year. And a mass shooting is like 4 more people, right? And that's just a mass shooting. That's not regular street crime. That's not the domestic violence murders. That's not the accidental shootings. That's not the suicides. It's not the assassinations.
So you mentioned crime. There's this crazy situation where violent crime in the United States is going down.
Dramatically. 30% in many places or more.
Dramatically down. And people's perception of crime or their fear of crime or their telling to pollsters that crime is a big issue is going up. What do you make of that gap? Like, what explains that?
I mean, we know as human beings, we're not completely rational beings, right? We are a mixture of emotion and, we are subject. We are risk averse, and subject to fear. There's a reason why the algorithms are not designed to make you happier and connect you with loved ones. The algorithm is designed to outrage, right? And how long has the mainstream media been pushing, if it bleeds, it leads? I think it's a problem of human perception. And the real challenge is, and I got to be honest with you, David, I don't have any great answers. How do you get people to be more in touch with the actual reality?
Right. I mean, I imagine that you are at town hall meetings and the like, and you're a law enforcement official.
Right.
And people are saying, I'm afraid of crime. You don't want to tell them, like, you're wrong, but, like, how do you navigate that?
Well, what I do is I try to tell them, we're going to do something about it. You tell me that this thing you're worried about it. We'll be in touch with local law enforcement to help you sort of know that somebody's taking it seriously. But let me remind you, crime is down. But then I'll also say something like this. But crime is up 100% to the person who's been directly affected. So you've got to validate people's feelings. If you don't, you will lose them. They want you to know, I'm concerned, and you need to be caring about that given your job. And so you validate that, but then you do try to weave in the facts and talk about what you're doing about it. And here's another thing we've been doing in my office is we've been talking about using civil tools to prevent crime. So, for example, we sued Kia Hyundai because their cars were dramatically disproportionate in auto thefts because of the way that their ignition system was working. So we sued them. We're working on that case. We're suing Glock. We're suing a retailer who was selling to straw purchasers. We're suing the opioid people, all of them. And so we're trying to go upstream because I believe that when you talk about regular old American street crime, that there is a corporate role that is almost never acknowledged. And the idea to make sure that you can't just start this particular model of Kia and Hyundai with a UBS cord, the decision to bypass that was made in the corporate boardroom. Somebody in a corporate boardroom said, oh, let's sell them this painkiller, tell them that it's non-addictive, and then marketed that. Somebody in a corporate boardroom is selling guns. You got to tell people you're doing stuff like that too, because people want to hear about prevention. Here's a funny thing though. If you tell people, well, then let's just lock everybody up, people also push against that a little bit too.
Right.
They know that's not the answer.
Crime is the justification that Donald Trump has used to deploy the National Guard to cities.
Disgusting.
You filed an amicus brief along with other state AGs opposing Trump's National Guard deployment in D.C., which you called unlawful, unconstitutional, and undemocratic.
Yep.
What power do the states have to prevent against or mitigate Trump's military deployments to cities, like if they come to Minneapolis?
Right. Well, he's going to have to prove that there's some sort of an emergency, right? And he can't prove it. That's factually absurd, right? And so we're going to be in court with him quick. Me and my fellow AGs talk about this stuff all the time. We're supporting Brian Schwab, who's the AG in D.C. Now, he's in a slightly different situation. Their authority kind of comes from a home rule statute, but Trump still has to justify the usurpation of their local authority with some sort of an emergency claim, which is a factually disprovable event. And so we're ready to be in court with it, but what we're really trying to do is also tell the world that, hey, look, some kid who joins the National Guard joined the National Guard to protect his or her friends and neighbors from floods, from fires, natural catastrophe, and maybe they will need to be deployed for military action, but they do it to serve their local community. They don't do it to be the toy plaything puppet of some tyrant. That's not why they join. Because I believe at the end of the day, David, if the American people say no, then the answer is going to be no. And he's going to have to get more tyrannical, more abusive, which will then sow the seeds of the destruction of his project. And so keep talking about it, keep suing about it, keep organizing about it, and then get people who are willing to run for office to call it out. And then engage with the independent press like yourself, because that is absolutely got to be part of our Save America strategy.
We're going to take a quick break. Coming up next, I ask Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison about his strategy of fighting Trump by going after the mega corporations that support his presidency. Welcome back to Lever Time. I'm sitting down with Minnesota's Attorney General, Keith Ellison. Let's pivot to some of the lawsuits you've brought up against the Trump administration. You mentioned tech. Tech monopolies fueling the flames of a lot of what we're dealing with. You successfully sued Google in 2023 over concerns about Google's anti-competitive conduct in the advertising industry. I think the question is, for people who keep hearing about tech and they think tech is like their computer and they don't think tech is tech,
big business.
Yeah, like talk to us about why you're so focused on that, why this has become like the central
Let me tell you this. I'm focused on monopoly in general, oligopoly in general. I could talk about Alphabet or Meta, but I could also talk about John Deere. I could also talk about JBS, or I could talk about AgriStats. We live in an age of intense market concentration. Now, for folks who are like, what the hell is Ellison talking about? What I mean is, there was a time when you might have 20 or 30 major producers in a given industry. Now you're pretty much down to 4, and I'm talking about hotel rooms, right? You know, Marriott, Hilton, or beer, Anheuser-Busch, and another big one. Certainly meat, Smithfield, Tyson, JBS. Walk on down the line. What about search engines? There's one big dog of them all. So here's the thing. When there's only a few big dogs in the industry, they not only can not innovate and basically give you crappy service or product, they can kind of charge you whatever they want for it, and they can pay the workers peanuts on the other side, and they can hire enough people to send them over to your democracy, which you're supposed to control, and buy off your members of Congress. There's a case called Citizens United, which said that they can essentially bribe Congress if they want to. So this monopoly capitalism staged in our economy is a problem. It's not free enterprise, David. Free enterprise is many buyers, many sellers, competition on price, service, product differentiation, competition. What we're talking about is non-competition. We're talking about collusion. In fact, what they're doing, what these big oligopolies and monopolies are doing, is more quote-unquote socialistic than a competitive market that I'm talking about. So what I'm saying is break them up. What I'm saying is regulate them. What I'm saying is stop them from infecting and diluting and weakening our American democracy. That's what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I'm talking about big tech. Big tech, we're suing TikTok. You know?
Yeah, talk to me about the TikTok thing, because like I imagine that, for instance, somebody may be listening to this clip right now by getting a clip on TikTok.
Right. By regulating and suing for antitrust violations, we're not necessarily trying to destroy the company or the industry. We're trying to make it more competitive so that there's not just TikTok. There's LickLock, RickRock, 25 other that you can pick from and are competing with each other for your business. Maybe some of them will say, you should use us because we won't share your data. Oh, you should use us because we're going to be more private, or we are more family friendly. They got to find their market niche. So that's what competition will bring you. But TikTok, they're big dogs. So they just say, hey, you could put anything on there you want. The one thing that really kills me is TikTok Live, because they will give you a tip if you're on TikTok Live. And you can imagine what some TikTok viewer might pay a 15-year-old girl to get a tip. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like a license invitation for sex trafficking. So we're suing them. They got to stop this endless scroll thing. I mean, you ought to be able to get to the bottom of it at some point. But they want to keep you on there as long as they can because they want to get your eyeballs on there. And they've got to stop these filters, which makes kids think that no matter how skinny they may be, that they're still too fat, you know? And
I worry about that with like my kids' friends, like how those algorithms and how those systems hack their brain.
But look, we were talking about the Kia Hyundai problem before. The Kia boys took off on social media, including TikTok and YouTube. You could figure out how to hotwire a car by watching them. You should not be able to crack cocaine or hotwire a car or break into a house or commit a crime by watching social media. You should not be able to do that. And yet, you could.
So you talked a lot about suits that you're bringing.
Yep.
In your office and when you talk to other AGs, what about the idea that the Republicans, Trump, the conservative movement has so stacked the courts that the game itself is rigged? Like, yes, you're an attorney general. One of the things you can do is file suits. But if they've already controlled the referees, how do you think about that? Do you have strategies about dealing with that?
Here's the good news. They haven't bribed all the referees. So we have been getting a lot of good decisions. In fact, we're beating them much more than we're not. And that's good, right? It's still well worth filing a lawsuit to protect our rights, to protect the allocation Congress gave to your state, because we're tending to win those things. Now, I will be honest. I don't believe that we're going to save American democracy through the courts, but I believe it's an indispensable tool we must exploit to the maximum. And I believe we need to look at the Supreme Court, which is probably the most compromised institution in the whole judiciary, and you got to differentiate them. Like, look, Alito and Thomas are done. They don't believe in fairness, justice, truth, or honesty. They're just complete hacks, and you can't talk to them. But I'd say maybe 8 times out of 10, you might be able to talk to Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, and maybe 7 times out of 10, you can get somewhere with Coney Barrett, and maybe 7 times out of 10, 6.5, you might be able to get somewhere with Roberts.
You're probably making Leonard Leo mad right now by even, saying you can get.
Well, he is a villain. He's an enemy of American democracy. Bad person, 100%. But I would say that it's not a hopeless thing. And Leonard Leo has not been completely successful, though you got to respect the game. He has been pretty successful, but not completely successful. But we need to figure out what to do about Leonard Leo. Should somebody be able to amass the fortunes of lots of rich people to make the justice system unjust? And I think we should not. It should be illegal. It should be wrong. First, we got to start with the fact that we've got to have fair elections, but we've also got to have an answer. I really urge people who care about judiciary and legal stuff to get involved with the American Constitution Society, because, you know, this is the counterweight to the Federalist Society, and, you know, you got to be in the game. You got to be in the game.
We're going to take one more quick break. Next up, I'm asking Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison how he thinks the Democratic Party can once again become the party of the working class. Welcome back to Lever Time. Let's talk about the Democratic Party. I mean, you've been in the state legislature, you've been in Congress, you've been a statewide elected official, you are the Attorney General.
My misspent youth, oh my.
Yeah. What do you make of people's dissatisfaction, deep dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party? What is it about?
Good
Why
question.
are people dissatisfied? What can be done about it?
I think what people are mostly with the Democratic Party is disappointed. I think people know that the Republicans aren't for them either. But I think it might occur to people, you guys say you're for workers. You guys say you're for the environment. You say you're for us, but anytime the fight comes up, we don't really feel that you're fighting hard enough. And so people get disappointed. You need the independent media. You need people like Bernie to really make the Democratic be democratic, you know. And I'm a strong believer in that. And let's just admit it. Yeah, cutting taxes and deregulating big business is a Republican project. But it was Bill Clinton who said we're going to repeal Glass-Steagall. It was Bill Clinton who said get rid of welfare as we know it. It was Obama who was pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You and I will remember that when we were doing health care reform, which I'm glad, you know, it happened, we could have done more. We could have got a public option. We could have done more. We could have had a national exchange. We could have done much, much more. For all the fighting we had to do, we should have had a better opening bid and stuck with it a lot longer. So my point is, yeah, Democrats in leadership, they've drank from the same money well that the Republicans have. They've tried to be Republican light. They've compromised and given up too soon. And the main thing that I think we need to start doing is we've got to go back to the people. Republicans thrive by shrinking the electorate. Democrats have to thrive by expanding the electorate. Now, last time was an anomaly because Republicans actually did well in places that we used to do well. But Republicans have already disappointed everybody. So now it's time for a reintroduction. Maybe we can make up, but it's not the people's fault. It's our fault. We've got to pledge to be much more loyal to our values. And on their own, within the money-based electoral system we have, there will always be some Democrats who are always going to look in that direction. That's why we got to be in touch with grassroots. That's why we need the independent media. That's why we need people who are somewhat like outliers like Mamdani and Bernie and others to just try to keep these people honest. The national Democrats should be endorsing Mamdani right now.
So presumably at a certain point, the Democrats will be back in some kind of power.
Yeah.
I mean, if there are free and fair elections.
Right.
Okay, that's a big if. It's my view, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but my view is that the Democrats had this moment in 2009, 2010.
Right.
Okay, Obama wins, huge mandate, people are upset, promises made on the campaign, huge majorities in Congress.
Right.
And part of the problem was they did not deliver in the way that people expected and wanted.
No, I think you're right.
Pledged.
No, I think history has proven you right.
Okay, and that sowed a deep dissatisfaction.
Right.
And so it's hard for people to believe, like, hey, you told me back then you were going to do things. You didn't really deliver in the way you did. I think my question then is, at the moment that the Democrats get some kind of power back, do you believe the people, whether elected officials, operatives, the sort of party itself, understands that lesson of history and knows that's what happened?
You know what? I hate to say only time will tell, but that's probably true. What I will say is that it is here. Let me give you a Minnesota example. We had trifectas before the last one we had, and we didn't do what we needed to do.
You mean you're talking like 10, 15 years
Yeah,
ago?
yeah. And we didn't do stuff that needed to be done. Last time we had a trifecta, we showed up and we did things that needed to be done. And I think, and I hope that people will remember that. I think in this upcoming election, people are going to see, well, they've got a taste of Trump, and we had a taste of the DFL, and we like the DFL better. I believe that's going to happen. But you can't just do a good job to win in politics. You also got to communicate effectively. Both are essential. And we do know that one thing about politics is funny is that there are people voting today who don't remember Obama being president. So you've got to always be refreshing. You got to stay on the campus. And we've got to answer problems. Like, I believe that you get a guy like Josh Hawley who says, oh, young men are having difficulty. That's actually true. But it's not because of Mexican immigrants, and it's not because of women, and it's certainly not because of trans people. It's because of the shape of our economy being so monopolistic, oligopolistic, and greedy, and a bought-off political system. Well, are we going to go there? We're going to address that problem. We should. We need to. But the real question is, will we? I know I'm going to throw all I got at it, and I know a lot of other people are too. We still got leaders who I feel need to get the memo. You just look at the Mamdani thing. I mean, the man won fair and square. Do you really think Eric Adams, who essentially pledged fealty to Donald Trump, is your guy? Do you think that Cuomo, who has been, I don't know, I mean, he used to sell out the Democratic Party in the New York State legislature on the regular,
right,
with the independent Democrat thing.
Right.
I mean, do you really think those two guys are better than Mamdani? How could you possibly believe
Well,
that?
what do you think's going on there? Get in their head for a sec.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think it has something to do with Middle East politics. I think that Mamdani has been very clear that he thinks that what's going on in Gaza is wrong, is a genocide. And I think that some of those folks at the top of the Democratic Party are reluctant to endorse him over that. But you can't deny the fact that he won not because of the Middle East stuff. He won because he put his finger on the most salient issue in America today, which is affordability, which is this economy doesn't work for average working people. And he's right about that. Eric Adams is not talking about that. Cuomo's not talking about that. Mamdani's talking about that, and he should win, and they should endorse him.
Two last questions. You've done cases on, for instance, transgender rights.
Yep.
There's a lot of the discourse in the party. You've got some folks saying the Democratic Party is perceived to be too, quote unquote, woke, too focused on identity issues, whether it's transgender,
Whatever it is.
What's your response to the people who say that?
Well, a few issues. I'm going to have to parse them a little bit.
Please.
But let me just say, I am not an identity politician. I happen to be a cisgendered, straight, black, male, Muslim. But when I think of myself politically, I line up with Bernie Sanders, an old white man born in New York who lives in Vermont.
Yeah.
That's my guy. I love this guy. And Elizabeth, a white female. And Maxine Waters, a black woman. So for me, it's about what they stand for, not about their demographics. And that's what it's got to be about. But at the same time, if you feel that it's your identity that has locked you out of American society, I think it's understandable that people would feel strongly about it. I don't condemn them for that. But I've never introduced myself at a campaign rally talking about I'm going to be the first black this or the first Muslim that. To me, that's the least thing that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about, can Mrs. Johnson and Miss Garcia and Mrs. Ahmed get dinner tonight? Can they afford the hamburger? Can they afford the eggs? Can their kids, who they told to go to college, ever afford the debt that they took under just to go? Those are the things that blow my hair back. That's what gets me excited. But I don't want to condemn the people who have more identities. But for me, we got to talk about what unites us all. We all got to earn a living. That's what we all got to do. And I would rather organize around that reality. Having said that, on this trans issue, I discourage Democrats from running away from the trans issue. Because here's the thing. These are our fellow Americans. These are our family members, our coworkers, our neighbors. And I refuse to throw them under the bus because Donald Trump doesn't like them. So I'm going to be standing for the civil rights of everybody because I believe in liberty and justice for all. And liberty and justice for all, at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, doesn't have any exceptions. And so that's where I stand on.
So the final question, I like to ask this question to all the guests we have, is if you could wave a wand or you were the king that Donald Trump hopes to be, and you could change 1, 2, 3 things. Like you get to wave a wand, you get 3 things you could change. It could be a policy, it could be something in politics, it could be, what are those 1, 2, 3 things top of mind that you would wave the wand for?
Aggressive antitrust enforcement in every industry and every sector. Competitionize the American economy in a way that makes sense. Raise taxes on the richest corporations and private individuals. Put the money into education, environmental protection, and really lift up human solidarity and help bring people to see their common humanity. I would get corporate America to understand that you may not intend for some 16-year-old to steal your car, but when you make it the cheapest way possible, you open the door for that. We need you to be a little bit more responsible. I would ask the Democratic Party to really, really dig in and say we're going to try to not maximize fundraising. We're going to maximize talking to Americans. We want to have a record-breaking voter turnout and community engagement strategy, not a record-breaking fundraising. And look, I'm a politician. I have to raise money, and there's no doubt the money's a part of this. Oh, another thing, I'd repeal Citizens United. I'd repeal Epic Systems. I'd get rid of that decision, and I'd let the people vote. And I'd have bipartisan national redistricting. So those are a few.
One more thing before you go. I said the last one, but really quickly. Are you feeling optimistic or pessimistic right now? Like when you look out, how you
I'm
feeling?
genetically optimistic. I don't know how to be pessimistic. I think that people are seeing. I mean, people are seeing it, man. Trump is very unpopular. He's in the 30s, maybe low 40s, probably up higher 30s, and I think we're ready to beat him. This is why he's trying to rig the election in places like Texas and Missouri. And I think if we show up and we act like we want to win, we're going to. But then the question you asked me is the big question. Okay, so what are you going to do about it?
Right.
What are you going to do with it?
Right.
You're going to just jump back? You're going to moderate? You're going to get weak? You're not going to address the affordability crisis? You're not going to address the monopolization of our economy? You're going to let these big, giant gun manufacturers continue to market their BS to people and have mass shootings every day? What are you going to do? And I think we need to act boldly and resolutely, and I think people will like it a lot.
Keith Ellison, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Lever Time. Lever Time is a production of The Lever. This episode was produced by Ariella Markowitz. It was edited and mixed by Ron Doyle. Our theme music is by Nick Campbell. You can subscribe to Lever Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the PRX mobile app, or wherever you get your podcasts. For ad-free episodes, exclusive bonus content, and access to The Lever's entire archive of investigative journalism, please consider becoming a premium subscriber. Head over to levernews.com to learn more about becoming a paid subscriber, or click the link in the episode's show notes. I'm David Sirota. We'll be back later this week with another episode of Lever Time.